very much for joining us for the Year 6 Supervisor Orientation for the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps. You're currently listening to Part 2 of our Supervisor Orientation Training Series. Before I get into our training today, I just once again want to thank you so much for your partnership and time in listening to these trainings and becoming oriented as a sub-site supervisor for the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps program. So today in Part 2 of our training, we're actually going to be talking about the AHAC policies and procedures. This training is really going to encompass both the Corporation for National and Community Service as well as the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps policies and procedures. So when I reference AHAC policies and procedures, this does mean all the policies and procedures within the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps program, CNCS policies included. As a sub-site supervisor, it is very important that you understand the VISTA program and the policies associated with the program. When a supervisor doesn't understand the AHAC VISTA project, it can put the VISTA member in a very awkward position. Members are told by both CNCS and NICA that violating CNCS and AHAC policies is not acceptable. So as a supervisor, if you don't understand these policies, you could accidentally misuse a VISTA or violate a policy. So please, as we go through the presentation today, take any note of policies that are confusing to you and follow up with your NICA assigned associate director to get clarification on said policy. NICA does hold the expectation that site supervisors will, to the best of their ability, understand the policies associated with the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps program. So today we're going to focus on those policies and procedures of members and of subsites when participating in the AHAC VISTA program. These policies are not all-encompassing, and supervisors are highly encouraged to review the CNCS VISTA Supervisor Handbook, the link is above, and the AHAC Supervisor Handbook, to fully understand the limitations, conditions, and policies of the AHAC VISTA program. So what are our expectations of subsites? AHAC, as I mentioned in the Part 1 of our training, AHAC subsites are basically the classrooms where our VISTA members are placed. And you as a subsite supervisor are the professor, just in the analogy of the NICA University. So even though NICA is responsible for the overall management of the VISTA projects, sub-sites and their supervisors play a crucial role in the success of the project and of their VISTA member. The above list, what you see on your screen, lists general expectations of you and your sub-sites in our partnership. And again, these are major expectations, and sites should still review and understand the Memorandum of Understanding in detail to ensure that you are complying with the policies in the program. So as you can see, some of our major expectations that we have of you is obviously to oversee the day-to-day work of the VISTA member, to make sure that they are reporting into the office, give them the tools necessary to succeed, that you'll assist the AHAC program in the selection and the recruitment process for your VISTA member, that you'll provide an acceptable VAD, supplemental matrix, and on-site orientation training form prior to the start of your VISTA member or members. Provide materials and supplies for the VISTA to fulfill their duties, which include an adequate working space, defined as a computer, desk, phone, reliable internet, and access to a printer. We really want to stress this point, that you as a sub-site, as the host organization, are essentially responsible for making sure that the member has everything they need to be successful. If we find out that you do not, or you are not providing an adequate working space, we will follow up with you and discuss ways that we can provide that adequate working space. That you understand and adhere to AHAC and CNCS policies, procedures, and reporting guidelines, and that you ensure accurate use of your VISTA members. That you pay a cost share to host your VISTA member. And that you post volunteer opportunities to NICA's hungervolunteer.org website. And then lastly, that you do not hire AmeriCorps VISTA members before their year of service has been complete. Just to note on that very last bullet point, if you do hire an AHAC AmeriCorps VISTA member before they can complete their end of the year, NICA will terminate our partnership with you for future placement of AHAC VISTAs in the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps program. So again, these are just major expectations that we do have of our sites. These are all listed in the Memorandum of Understanding along with other expectations that we do hold of you. So please make sure that you understand these expectations. And as I said before, note any that you would like to follow up with NICA on. So here is our expectations when it comes to the management of your members. So the previous slide was just our general expectations of our subsites, and this is our expectations that we have of you as a subsite supervisor in your member management. So these are, again, just the major expectations that we have. They're not all encompassing. So of course there are other expectations that will come up throughout the year of the VISTA. Now, Vistas need the support and guidance of their supervisor. Every Vista that you work with is going to be different. For those of you who have partnered with the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps project for the last 5 years or even the last few years, I'm sure this speaks to you. You've had probably numerous Vistas come through, and each one has had different skill sets. Some are going to be local recruits from your communities. Others are going to be national recruits and will not know anything about your community. The quality of the support that you provide will determine the success of the service experience. They say that the success of a Vista in a Vista project is approximately 80 to 90% the sub-site, and then about 10 to 15% the intermediary product sponsor, like NICA. So really, the success of the project depends on how you treat your Vista member, and it depends on how you manage them, and that plays a very critical role in their success. Now, we understand for some of you that taking on the supervision of a Vista member is in addition to your other duties. And we all work in nonprofits, and we all know that we have a lot to do on the day-to-day. So we wanted to be clear that the supervision of a Vista is not an easy task. And depending on the Vista you receive, it could be an endeavor that requires coaching and mentoring. You should go into this experience expecting to put 5 to 10 hours a week, at least a week, in providing adequate supervision to an AHAC Vista member. However, please note that if you do select and place a Vista member, that NICA does expect that you will put forth the effort to retain that Vista member. And what we mean by that is if your Vista member is going to require professional development, or they require a little bit more guidance, coaching, and mentoring, we do expect that you will put forth the effort to provide that to your Vista member before we seek termination or removal of that member from the Vista project. Our strongest subsites have supervisors who take the responsibility for the Vista project, the AHAC Vista project, who communicate regularly and take time to meet with their Vista and NICA staff, who invest in the Vista's professional development, who mentor the AHAC Vista, and who appreciate the purpose of the Vista member. You as the subsite supervisor are the gatekeeper for your AHAC Vista to ensure they are not misused by other staff or yourself. So it is important that you understand the purpose of the VISTA program so you don't take the VISTA, place the VISTA in an awkward situation in which they have to address violations and policies. Subsite supervisors are directly responsible for the AHAC VISTA and their placement in the project and at your subsite. You should understand the program intimately and make an effort to know at the very least the basics of the project and the basics of the policies and procedures that we have outlined in this presentation. Additionally, communicating regularly with NICA staff is key to the success of VISTAs and subsites. Now, as you look on your screen, I do want to just mention some of these member management expectations. So obviously you are expected, and we'll talk about this further on in Part 2 of our training, but you are expected to provide an onboarding, orientation, and training to your VISTA member in their first month of service. You are to provide administrative support. As mentioned before, that includes the desk space, office supplies, equipment. Now, you are the organization sponsor, and the way that NICA looks at this is that you should treat your VISTA member as any other employee. They should not be treated any differently. They should receive the same benefits, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we move on. And by benefits, I mean just general office policies like reimbursement. But they should be treated as an employee of your organization, meaning they should have the same access to supplies and equipment that other people within your organization have access to. That you'll provide them supervision, that you will monitor their attendance and leave. Now we have VISTA leaders obviously who will do this as well, but when we say attendance and leave monitoring, we just mean that you are watching when they're coming in at the office and when they are coming out of the office. As I mentioned earlier, you are the responsible party for the VISTA member, the AHAC VISTA member. If we can't get a hold of them, if we're trying to reach them, the next person we go to is the site supervisor. And we do expect that you know where that member is, and if you don't, then obviously we consider that to be a member as missing or AWL. That you will provide the member with service-related transportation. So this means if the member is doing any work-related travel that is not their commuting to and from your project host site, you are responsible and mandated by our Memorandum of Understanding to reimburse that member for that service-related travel at the same rate that you reimburse any of your other employees. Now, of course, NICA will cover any service-related travel or transportation for our NICA-sponsored events, like conferences, PSOs, and other events. The next bullet point, acknowledge members as AHAC VISTAs and AmeriCorps VISTAs, and CNCS and USDA FNS as funders and supporters. it's really important that our communities and our community members know about the impact of their federal dollars. And as you know, AmeriCorps Vista members are funded by federal dollars. So make sure to recognize Vistas publicly, not as staff, but as members devoting their lives to a year in national service. We do ask that all of our members acknowledge themselves as Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps Vistas in their signature, and that as much as possible that you go out of your way to include USDA FNS and CNCS logos on materials that Vista members create. Now we understand that we all have a lot of funders to acknowledge, and this may not be possible on all of your materials, but we do ask that you try your best to really acknowledge your Vista as an AHOC Vista and to really acknowledge our funders and supporters. And then lastly, the last 2 points I think are pretty self-explanatory, but if you have any questions on those, please follow up with us. Another major site expectation is cost share. So all of our sites are required to pay a cost share for hosting a Vista in our program. I want to emphasize that this is based on your organization's total operating budget. This is not your departmental budget. So if you're working in a large food bank, it's going to be your food bank's total operating budget, not your department's, like your social service department, etc. So please make sure that you understand that. The cost share payments do go towards supporting the AHOC Vistas through training opportunities, field site visits by NICA staff, and just general administrative services. The cost share system has changed from previous years. As you can note, you will be required to pay half the cost share even if you don't recruit and fill your Vista position. So all of our partner sites are going to have to pay 2 cost share payments. The first cost share payment will come near the beginning of the year, and then the second cost share payment will come at some other point during the year. As it says on your screen, even if you don't recruit and fill your Vista position, you will be required to pay half of the cost share. This is going towards the work that the NICA staff does in the administration of the recruitment process, and also to just really highly encourage and have sites take on some of the responsibility of the recruitment process. So do keep that in mind, that you will be required to pay half that cost share regardless if you fill the position. It's also important to note that if you lose your Vista member halfway through their year, for example, you are still required to pay the cost share for that Vista member. As mentioned before, we do expect our subsites to do everything within their power to retain their Vista member for the duration of their Vista year. If you have any questions about the cost share, please do reach out to your NICA representative to further discuss. Now this was mentioned in part 1 of our training, but I do really want to go into depth about capacity building versus direct service. And this is a policy that applies to all Vistas. Any Vista, not a Vista in the Anti-Hunger and Opportunity Corps program, but just across the board. And that goes back to what the mission of Vista is. And Vista is a capacity building program. The idea of the program is to look at long-term solutions to ending hunger and poverty in our local communities. So we really want to emphasize that members cannot be doing direct services, and that's the act of providing services to identified recipients or clients of a program. So your member cannot be working on your hunger hotline, for example, on a day-to-day basis. Your member should not be out in the community doing SNAP applications and pre-screening assistance. Your member should not be at a farmer's market every Friday from 2 to 4 p.m. Unless they're doing some sort of capacity building service built into that. So they should not be doing direct services. They need to be working on indirect capacity building tasks. Now, we all understand that we work for nonprofit organizations, and sometimes there is what we call an all-hands-on-deck type of atmosphere. And we understand that. We understand that there will be times that maybe the Vista will have to do direct services. It becomes a problem for NICA when those direct services or what you're asking them to do is consistent. So for example, your Vista member in their first month or so should probably go through the SNAP application and pre-screening process. They should shadow maybe an outreach worker and see how that process goes and screen a couple of clients because they're getting familiar with the program. That is fine from our perspective. It is not fine when it becomes a consistent duty that they have to do every week for 365 days. Because what we will ask ourselves is, how is that work sustainable? How is the Vista member going out and doing application assistance on the day-to-day or once a week going to be sustainable? So If what we tell our VISTA members and what we tell our subsites is as long as you can answer that question, as long as you can ask yourself, is what I'm doing sustainable or will it be sustainable? And as long as the answer to that question is yes, then most likely you're doing capacity building services. But if the answer to that is no, you should take a step back and you should reevaluate the work that you're having your VISTA member do. Now, the other thing, the other 2 bullet points on here under the what ifs on your far right say a volunteer doesn't show up and we need them to answer the phones. We understand that many of our VISTA volunteers do volunteer management in the field, and oftentimes those volunteers are performing direct services. Again, we do not tell the VISTA member that they shouldn't do those direct services if a volunteer shows up. We, again, know that they have duties to fulfill and there's targets to reach, so they should still perform those direct services. However, again, going back to my previous statement, it becomes a problem when it's on an ongoing basis. And then lastly, we understand that all organizations have administrative aspects that may be direct service oriented for your organization. And the way we view that is if every member in your organization is required to do a direct service type of activity, then the VISTA member can be required to do that. For example, answering the phones. Answering the phones is viewed as an administrative direct service activity by CNCS, as is really any secretarial type duties of a VISTA. So if it is a requirement of all of your employees at your organizations to man the phones and to answer the phones when you get calls, then the VISTA member should be required to do so. However, you cannot assign a VISTA member to be used like a secretary or to be answering the phones all the time, because that is considered a direct service task or activity. So some examples of capacity building AHAC VISTA activities include research and apply for new funding sources like grants, recruit and train long-term community volunteers, establish and cultivate new relationships with donors, media, and community stakeholders, design and implement databases to track donors and volunteers, create templates for informational materials and event planning, and much more. If NICA does discover that your site is in violation of this policy of direct service versus capacity building, our first step will be to have a conversation with you and your organization about how we can look to change the VISTA members' duties and tasks. If it's an ongoing violation of this policy, it will affect the current and future partnership, whether that is the removal of the current VISTA and or discontinuation of the partnership moving forward. So enforcing policies with members. As you know, there are a lot of policies involved in this program. We are working with the Corporation for National and Community Service. Then you have NICA, who's your project sponsor, and then you have you as your subsite. So we just want to be clear that CNCS AmeriCorps VISTA terms, conditions, and benefits of service take precedent over your organizational policies. No matter what, any CNCS AmeriCorps VISTA term, condition, and benefit is like final for everybody and takes precedent over your organizational policies. Now, any policy that AHAC has or NICA has for your members, again, takes precedent over your organizational policies. Now, you as an organization, your organizational policies take precedent when they do not conflict with an AmeriCorps VISTA or AHAC policy. So what do I mean by that? So for example, here AHAC or NICA and CNCS do not determine the dress code for your VISTA member. If you require all of your staff to dress professionally on the day-to-day, wear no jeans, your VISTA member is required to follow that organizational policy because it does not conflict with an AHAC or CNCS policy. Another example of that would be when they come into the office. So AHAC's policy is that all members must work a 37.5-hour work week, which means 8-hour days with a 30-minute lunch. But we do not care when the VISTA member reports into the office and when they leave. You as an organization determine that based on your organizational policy. So if you're open 9 to 5, then the VISTA should be required to report 9 to 5. So if you have any questions about enforcing policies, please kindly let us know. So let's start off and go through a little bit about the AmeriCorps VISTA terms and conditions of service. So we will definitely talk about this a lot more when we look at recruitment and as we start recruiting the VISTA member. But just to provide you an overview, the terms of service is for anyone to serve as an AmeriCorps VISTA, they must be a U.S. citizen, national or legal resident. They must pass a National Sex Offenders Registry check, and they must pass a background check, and just to emphasize that those results are not shared with NICA or partners. So we know that a lot of our VISTA members do work in schools, or you may be required to get a background check to share with schools. What we advise you to do is, since we do not have access to those background checks, is just to reiterate to any partners that you are working with that these are AmeriCorps Vista, these AmeriCorps Vista volunteers are considered federal employees, and they've been vetted by a federal agency for a federal program. If that does not work, then unfortunately you yourselves will have to conduct your own background check using your own organizational funds. The conditions of AmeriCorps Vista service. It is a 12-month full-time commitment. There are restrictions on outside employment, and we'll talk about that later on. There are limitations on religious activities. There are limitations on political activities, and there are educational restrictions. Now, all of these conditions of service are communicated directly with the AmeriCorps Vista member before they come into the AmeriCorps Vista program. Now, the one that we want to communicate to you as partners are the restrictions on outside employment, limitations on religious activities, and limitations on political activities. The restrictions on outside employment, we do allow, or thankfully CNCS does now allow VISTAs to have outside employment. It was prohibited before. They did not allow any outside employment, but now they do allow part-time outside employment for a VISTA member. The VISTA member does have to get that approved by their site. It's not just a guarantee. So if you as a sub-site do not feel that a VISTA member could handle a 40-hour work week and an additional job on top of that and still fulfill their role as a VISTA member, you can deny their request for outside employment. There is a form that members will have to fill out and submit, and it has to be submitted before they start their outside employment. And I cannot stress that enough. So if your member does want to have outside employment, they need to fill out that form. They need to submit it to NICA as soon as possible. The limitations on religious activities. Since AmeriCorps Vista members are serving in a federal funded program, they are covered under the Hatch Act. So while identified as an AmeriCorps Vista member, they cannot do any proselytizing, meaning they shouldn't be, if they're working with churches, they shouldn't be handing out Bibles. This does not mean that you can't partner with churches or the VISTA member cannot partner with churches. They of course can, but they should not be doing anything in terms of encouraging people to come to a church or just being careful about how they frame anything dealing with various churches. Limitations on political activities. Again, because members are covered under the Hatch Act, they cannot engage in any advocacy. We really cannot stress this enough. We understand that a lot of our partners do a lot of advocacy, but we have to be very, very careful with this. We do have restrictions on the type of events that members can attend and conferences. We do not approve for members to attend conferences that are advocacy specific. We also want to emphasize that the member can meet with political figures if they are informing them of what they are doing or they're informing them of an issue, but they cannot, obviously, like I said, advocate, write letters to the editor, well identified as a VISTA member. If you have any questions on those, please kindly let us know. So you may be asking yourself, who commits to these types of terms and conditions of service? On a national level, 81% of AmeriCorps Vista members are female. 82% are born in 1982 or later. 93% are experienced volunteers, meaning they have volunteered before joining the VISTA program. 68% have more than 2 years of volunteer experience. 62% are local recruits from the community, and 38% are national recruits who relocate to serve. So what are the benefits of service? If those are the conditions, what are the benefits that members will receive? Well, members will receive a VISTA living allowance. They'll receive personal leave, emergency leave, the VISTA health benefit, workers' compensation, and optional life insurance. And then there is the child care benefit, relocation assistance if applicable, deferment of or forbearance of student loans, again not guaranteed, and then the Siegel AmeriCorps Educational Award or end of service cash stipend. And we're going to go through and we're going to talk about each one of these and just go a little bit more in depth. So the first is the VISTA living allowance. So the AmeriCorps VISTA living allowance is disseminated by the New York City Coalition Against Hunger. Unlike other AmeriCorps Vista projects that you may have worked with, NICA receives all the funds for this program and we handle the payroll. So if ever during your VISTA members year they say, I haven't gotten paid or I'm having issues with pay, they need to contact NICA immediately because we do handle that. The VISTA Living Allowance amount does vary by county throughout the country, and it's determined by the federal poverty rate for that county. It cannot be altered. It cannot be changed. So whatever number we give you as we move forward in our partnership is the number that your VISTA will get paid. VISTAs receive their pay every 2 weeks, biweekly on a Thursday. If they are receiving relocation assistance, again, that will also come from NICA. Federal taxes are withheld from the living allowance, but state and local taxes are not. So depending on what states VISTA members serve, they could pay back a lot in state and local taxes. So we do want to emphasize that, and we do tell that to members when they're going through the recruitment process, but just so you know as VISTA supervisors as well, that there are no state and local taxes taken out of the VISTA living allowance. So going on to personal leave. AHAC AmeriCorps VISTA members receive 10 work days of personal leave and 10 sick days during their year of service, so 20 days total. We do ask that members do not use all of their days in the first 3 or the last month of service. There are exceptions to this, of course. We just ask that you email and get approval from NICA first before letting your member take 10 days off in their first 3 months or letting them save all their personal days in their last month of service. CNCS frowns upon that, and so we just like to know if that is happening. Members are required to ask you for permission to take a sick or personal day per your organizational policies. So the only policy that NICA has and AHAC has regarding personal leave is that a leave form must be submitted to NICA if a member is taking more than 5 vacation days or they are traveling out of their service state. So that's the only requirement that we ask of, is that that form is submitted to us when those requirements happen, and then also that the members track their leave time in America Learns and let us know when they're taking a sick day and a personal day. But in terms of your organizational policies, if you have forms that employees must fill out to take leave, or if you have the policy that a member needs to let you know 2 weeks before they're taking vacation, then those policies still apply to the VISTA member. Now again, it's 10 personal days and 10 sick days, and we really want to keep that separate. Now we understand sometimes members may want to take use some of their sick time as vacation days. And that's okay. Again, we just ask for approval, and we do not allow a member to use more than 5 of their sick days as personal days. And the reason for that is emergency leave. So as we go on to our next slide, there is emergency leave available to VISTA members should they need it, and it's up to 5 days of emergency. However, CNCS would prefer that members use their sick time if they still have it to cover emergencies before granting them additional emergency leave. Emergency leave is not guaranteed, and this is where communication really is important between subsites and NICA. We must have approval by CNCS to grant emergency leave, and we must have documentation of an emergency. So one of our expectations of subsites are to let us know when emergencies arise or when a member is not at their site. So please, if your member does have an emergency during their year, make sure that you or the member notify NICA as soon as possible so that we can process emergency leave if it is needed. If granted the emergency time, CNCS could reimburse the member to drive and or fly to the site of the emergency within the U.S. only. So if your member needs to go home because of a death in the family, that's something that CNCS could potentially reimburse the member for. Now, it's important to note that the emergency leave is only granted for immediate family members. So that excludes extended family like aunts and cousins, and it only includes sisters, brothers, husband, spouse, well, husband, spouse, the same thing, but parents, grandparents, and so on and so forth. So many of you may be wondering how our flex time or how time tracking works. So as mentioned before, members are required at minimum to work 37.5 hours a week. There is no exception to this. all AHAC VISTA members have to work 37.5 hours a week. Now, if your organization or you require your employees to work 40-hour work weeks, then your VISTA can work 40-hour work weeks. If you require 45, you can request that they work 45 hours. Now, because this is a 24/7 program, or VISTAs are supposed to be on call 24/7, you can request that your VISTA member works more hours, or you can ask them to stay later to get assignments done. So if a member works more than 37.5 hours and your organization does allow flex time, then members can use our flex time policy. Now, we do not, the New York City Coalition Against Hunger does not allow the accrual of comp time. So if your organization does do comp time, then unfortunately that does not apply to the VISTA member. They'll have to use this flex time policy. There are no exceptions to this. So the flex time policy basically states that if a member works more than their allocated hours within a current reporting period, they must use those extra hours within that current reporting period. So for example, if a member works 45 hours in the first week of a reporting period, they could theoretically take 5 hours off the next week. Or since it's 37.5, they could take a whole day off the following week. You have to approve this. If you do not approve the flex time to be used, then it's not approved. But again, just going back, we do not permit comp time. Comp time is where you can accrue time in one reporting period to be used in a future reporting period. There is no exceptions to this, so please do not allow your members to use comp time. If you have any questions, kindly let us know. And then also the holiday policy. So we require all AHAC VISTA members to follow NICA's holiday policy. And this is to ensure uniformity and equal treatment amongst all of our AHAC VISTA members. The partners that we work with have various holiday schedules. Some of you are closed 2 weeks around Christmas, where others of you are only closed on Christmas Day. Or some of you have a week off for Easter and others don't. So to ensure that uniformity, we do require that all AHAC VISTA members follow our holiday policy. We give 10 holidays throughout the VISTA year. And if your organization is closed and NICA is open, the member has two options. Option number one is they use their own personal time, their 10 days, to take that as a vacation day. Or option number two is that the member works. Now, what we do ask is that the member is provided the ability to be able to report to the office, to physically be in their office space to do their work on a holiday. However, if this is not possible due to your security regulations or the location of your organization, then we do allow the member to work from home that day. If that is going to happen, however, we do request that you submit to NICA just an outline of what the member is going to be doing while they're working from home. And if the member does not have a computer or access to the necessary equipment to work from home, you would provide that to them, and you would provide them projects that they can do from home. Now, the biggest conflicting days of our holidays usually is Election Day. We do not give Veterans Day off. Instead, that is kind of switched with Election Day. So again, we do not allow comp time. There's no switching of holidays. There's no working on a NICA holiday to be able to take it off at a future holiday. So that is not, that kind of falls under our flex time policy. So please do be aware of that. But these are NICA's holidays. We try to the best of our ability to remind members specifically of when those holidays are and when they should be off. And we also try to do the same with our sub-site supervisors. But we encourage you to take note of these holidays and just to make sure that your member takes off on these days and or you work out something with them to make sure that they are getting their holidays. So working hours and tracking time. I mentioned this when I discussed the flex time policy, but just to reiterate, members must work a minimum of 37.5 hours a week. This is 75 hours a reporting period, so 75 hours every 2 weeks. You can require more hours a week, but all members must meet this basic minimum. This basic minimum is basically a 9 to 5 schedule with a 30-minute lunch. Members must submit a timesheet every 2 weeks via America Learns, our reporting and tracking system. As I'm sure you are all aware, tracking is extremely important to the vitality of any nonprofit, but particularly when it comes to timesheet submission, this is very important to the AHOC program. We are required every 2 weeks to submit to CNCS a sponsor verification form notifying that all members are in service. So it's very, very important that we have timesheets from our VISTA members, and it's very important that supervisors approve these timesheets in a timely manner. We ask that you do not wait to go in to approve timesheets once every 2 months, because we do need those accurate records as they come in, and without your approval we cannot move forward and approve the timesheets from our end. Now, America Learns, like I said, is our reporting and tracking system. That is where our members complete their biweekly reports, or their reporting and reflection logs, and their timesheets. You as sub-site supervisors will receive instructions on how to set up your account and approve timesheets in America Learns as we get closer to the start date of your VISTA member. If there are any issues with the timesheet, if the member is not working the minimum number of hours or they are not tracking their time correctly, do know that the VISTA leader does approve all timesheets, and they will deny a timesheet if it's not completed correctly, and you as a supervisor will get notification that it was not approved, and you will have to go in and work with the VISTA leader to reapprove that timesheet. So the child care assistance. As I mentioned, one of the benefits of AmeriCorps Vista service is the child care assistance. And this is something that is only if it's applicable. Obviously, if you don't have a child, you can't apply for the child care assistance. But it's also important that it varies by state, and the VISTA does have to apply for the assistance. It's not a guaranteed benefit. We really want to emphasize that during the recruitment process, please do not tell a member who has a child, or if your applicant does have a child, that they will receive child care assistance automatically. Just like SNAP benefits or another federal program, the member does have to apply through the state. So how each state administers it is different. The maximum amount of the child care assistance is $400 per child per month. Now we do want to emphasize that NICA is here to support our members who need child care assistance, and we will work with I am so sorry, everybody. I apologize for our recording for the background noise. They are conducting a test of the fire alarm system. I am going to move forward and continue with this presentation, so I apologize for the distracting background noise. If you cannot hear or you need further clarifications, please kindly just note below in the survey. So like I said, NICA is here to assist members in applying for child care assistance. So if your member is having any issues, please have them notify us. There are many contacts that you go through to get the child care assistance, and oftentimes members forget that we are here to advocate on their behalf as they go through and serve as an AmeriCorps Vista member. So if any of your members do have issues, kindly have them reach out to their Vista leader so we can advocate on their behalf. So another benefit of service is relocation assistance. Now the relocation assistance only applies to any AmeriCorps Vista relocating 50 miles or more from their current residence or their initiating home of record. And 50 miles or more, the CNCS is pretty strict about this. So do not tell a member unless you know for sure that they live more than 50 miles from your organization. Members will receive $550 on their first check to help offset the settling into a new city. And then members may also be eligible for mileage or flight reimbursement for their relocation. So as noted before, the $550 settling in allowance is distributed by NICA on the member's first paycheck, whereas the eligibility for mileage or flight reimbursement comes from CNCS directly. So just a note about the two differences there. So the end-of-term benefits. As mentioned on the previous slide about the AmeriCorps benefits of service, there are three end-of-term benefits that a member can actually qualify for. And one of them is not on the slide. And the first one is the non-competitive eligibility status for federal jobs. This is something that is applied to all AmeriCorps Vista members who complete a full 365 days of Vista service, and basically gives a member 1 year non-competitive eligibility to apply for federal jobs. And then there is also the choice, end of term benefit choice of the Siegel AmeriCorps Educational Award or the end of service cash stipend. Members themselves get to choose these awards. You can assist your member in making this choice, but most members make this choice on their own and before they even arrive at your site to start their service. But in terms of promoting the VISTA position, these are great benefits, particularly the Siegel AmeriCorps Educational Award. It's quite a bit of money that you can use for current loans, future loans, and or for future schooling or current schooling. So the next piece, this was kind of already mentioned a little previously when we talked about America Learns in terms of timesheets and reporting, but we just want to again emphasize the policy and procedures around member reporting. Members are required to submit a reporting and reflection logs every 2 weeks at the same time that their timesheets are due. Questions on these logs directly relate to the reporting requirements found on the VADs and supplemental matrices, and we'll really talk about what those reporting requirements look like when we get to Part 3 of our training. But you as supervisors, we do expect you to assist members in reaching these reporting requirements. So we expect that you work with them, that you make sure that they understand what the reporting is and what they should be reporting on. Now of course NICA does provide those trainings with members, but we really work together on these reporting requirements because we want to make sure that what members are doing is benefiting your community. So oftentimes, because we have very bureaucratic, jargon-filled documents, members get really confused on the reporting, and so we really need supervisors to assist us in making sure that members are reporting correctly and that you assist them in making sure that they understand their reporting requirements. You as supervisors do have access to your members' reports in America Learns, so you can review what members are submitting to us. You as supervisors will be required at some point to write a report this year and submit it to NICA. Usually this report is to help supplement additional questions that our funders might want to have that they didn't tell us before, so we couldn't put it on the reporting reflection logs. So we can't really give you like specifics as to what this report will look like. We can tell you that a lot of it's going to be numbers related to clients that VISTA members help serve or estimations on how many clients you think your VISTA members impacted. Now, we understand that you have your own grants and your own reporting requirements, so you can ask members to report on other metrics outside of their VADs and supplemental matrices. However, at the bare minimum, the expectation is that members will report on all reporting requirements and performance measures found on their VADs and supplemental matrices. There's really no exceptions to this. They should all be able to report on those reporting milestones. If they aren't, then that's a discussion that we can have to figure out why they aren't reporting and if the projects that the member is working on are approved projects within the AHAC scope of work. Member conference calls and trainings. So we have a policy that members must participate in a conference call every other week. They happen every other Friday at 3 p.m. They are calls with the VISTA leader. We do regional and national calls. We ask that members do make a priority to be on these calls every other week. We understand that sometimes they may have meetings or they can't make the meeting, but we ask that you don't schedule the member out in the community every Friday at 3 p.m. so that they can participate in these calls and trainings. The purpose of these calls is to share best practices, facilitate resource sharing, and to just remind the member that they're part of a bigger cohort of VISTA members. And all of our VISTA members are doing the same type of work. So it is important that we share those best practices and we have them talk and communicate with each other. And then we also have quarterly partner calls. These take place on a Friday in place of a biweekly conference call. These ones are mandatory. So the biweekly calls that we have every other Friday, we don't make them mandatory, we just highly encourage. Whereas the quarterly partnership calls are mandatory because they are with our partners, CNCS and USDA. So all the members receive that quarterly partners call schedule when they start with us. So they are notified well in advance as to when those meetings are, and we just ask that you as supervisors make sure that they attend those meetings. We also like to host up to 3 conferences a year for our AmeriCorps Vista members. This includes a potential conference at PSO. We do not know if we will have funding for those conferences in year 6 of our project. As soon as we find out if we have funding, we determine the dates and we notify all supervisors and Vista members as soon as possible. We still do try to have a mid-year and an end-of-the-year conference. Again, this does depend on Vista funding. So we will definitely let you know about that. Vista trainings, so there are via Vista Campus, which is a tool run by the Corporation for National and Community Service that allows sub-sites, supervisors, and project sponsors like NICA and Vista members to access all the resources needed to run the AmeriCorps Vista program and just have trainings, and there's webinars up there, and there's forums, and it's a really great hub for supervisors and members to utilize to make sure their questions are getting answered or to find information about the AmeriCorps Vista program. So we do encourage members to participate in those webinars. And then there's also Vista trainings. We do like to do Vista peer-to-peer trainings. So we encourage each one of our Vistas to think about a training they may want to provide to their other fellow Vistas throughout their year, and then we may ask them to provide that training via a webinar and or an in-person conference. So if you ever feel that your Vista member is a stellar Vista member and they have something they can train fellow Vistas on, let us know so that we can encourage them to conduct a training and so that they can also get that professional development. And then lastly on here we have AHAC training support. NICA does have money available to Vista members who are interested in seeking additional trainings that cost money. This training support request, there's a form that members need to complete to receive this money. The amount varies by year depending on our budget and our funding and just how much we have really left over and available to support members. In the past it's been anywhere from $500 to $550. NICA does reserve the right to, again, adjust that number as necessary based on our budget, but we like to make sure that each member will get the same allocated amount should they want to use that AHAC training support request. Now, members do have to submit a form to us to receive this money. We do ask that if sub-sites have it available in their budget to pay for the training, that they do so. The AHAC training support money is just kind of here as a last resort if the sponsoring agency producing the conference or training cannot give an AmeriCorps Vista discount or a free entrance, and then if the site cannot afford to send the member for that training. So we do ask that if you do have it in your budget that you do pay for the training. Now, the trainings that we will cover must benefit the AmeriCorps, the Vista members' year of service. So we do encourage that members attempt to use this training support request in their first 9 months of service. Training support requests that are kind of filed in that last quarter of service are much harder to approve just because the member has already mostly completed their year of service. So then I just want to go through and talk about some notable additional administrative policies for members. These are policies that have been violated in the past by our sites or are just ones that are commonly discussed or asked about. So the first one here is sub-sites cannot provide additional assistance to Vista members. What do we mean by this? This is monetary assistance. So we do not allow our sub-sites to provide additional housing assistance to your Vista member. We do not allow you to provide them monetary pay. So for example, if you wanted to pay them in addition to their Vista salary, you cannot do that. That is prohibited in our program. There's an AHAC rental assistance. Now this is tentative. We've been offering this to our Vista members for the last 2 years, and we hope to continue to do so in year 6 of the project. The AHOC rental assistance is money that the New York City Coalition Against Hunger has available that we give to VISTA members to help pay for their rent. It is an amount that's based on, again, the federal poverty rate for whatever county the member is serving in. Excuse me. So the rates vary depending on if the member is serving in California or if the member is serving in New York City. So that amount does vary, and there is a process that the member has to go through to receive those funds. It is not automatically guaranteed, and like I said, they'll have forms and stuff that they'll need to fill out and submit to NICA. The next is working remotely and teleservice. VISTA members are not allowed to work remotely or to telecommute during their year of service. We cannot emphasize this enough. Even if it is an organizational policy that you allow members to work from home 2 days a week, the VISTA member cannot participate in that policy. So please do not have or allow your member to work remotely or work from home. The only time that this is approved is when there's a holiday where your office is closed and NICA is open and the VISTA member cannot get into the office. That is the only time we allow working from home. If this is a problem, please contact us immediately. This is one of those policies that we enforce pretty strongly. So if your member is violating this policy on a continuous basis, it could hurt future partnerships. And again, this is a CNCS policy more so than it is an AHOC policy, but we really want to emphasize that members cannot work remotely. The outside employment, we already talked about this when we were talking about the terms and conditions of service, but just reiterating again that there is outside employment available for AmeriCorps VISTA members, but you as a site have the opportunity to decline the request to work out of outside employment, and you also can determine with the VISTA member how many hours that you would allow them to have this outside employment. Now, NICA does have to approve all outside employment requests. As the sub-site approves it, most likely we are going to approve it unless it's in violation of just the outside employment policy, meaning that it's more than the 20 hours a week, or that it's going to, the VISTA member is not going to be able to do their normal 9 to 5. Whatever possible when it comes to the outside employment policy, members should not should not be how do I want to word this? It cannot conflict with the normal office schedule. So they cannot say that they're going to work 2 days a week at another job from 9 to 5. Whatever outside employment that they receive or that they get, it must be outside of their VISTA working hours or their office hours. They should not be away from their site due to an outside employment. So that would be an instance where NICA would deny the request. The travel reimbursement, so for service-related travel, just once again reiterating that you as a site are responsible for providing the travel reimbursement to VISTA members if they are doing any work-related travel outside of their commuting. So if they are driving their car for work-related purposes and they're traveling to meetings, you do need to reimburse them. Now for any VISTA member who is expected to use their own personal car, there are forms that they need to fill out to receive workers' compensation from CNCS should they be in an accident due to work-related travel. All members do receive that communication, but just so that you know, there is workers' compensation and insurance available to members should they get in an accident due to travel for work-related purposes. And then on your screen it says cell phone reimbursement. That should actually say technology reimbursement. We are requesting that if you are expecting a member to use their own personal equipment to do their work, so you're not going to provide them with a desk phone, but you're going to make them use their cell phone, then you are responsible for reimbursing that member for using their cell phone and their personal technology, including their own personal computer. We are currently outlining this policy in our supervisor manual, and we'll have more guidance to you, or there's more guidance on this in that manual. So if you are anticipating having the member use their own personal technology, do be advised that that is a new policy this year. And then lastly, the treatment of AHAC members. As mentioned at the beginning of this training, members need to be treated as employees of your organization. They should not be in any way referred to as an intern, as a volunteer. You should treat them as you would treat any other employee, and just really emphasize to your fellow employees the purpose and role of the AHAC VISTA member so that the member is not misused at the site. And then just really quickly to talk about grievances. We understand that conflicts arise and grievances happen, and your VISTA member may not work out this year. And so on your screen in front of you is our grievance policy. We do ask that sub-sites try to resolve the issue internally as much as possible, but if they cannot address the grievance, then obviously you would elevate it to NICA. Because this is a federal program, please understand that we do need documentation of any grievance. If you have not been documenting it or there's no documentation that we can receive, it makes it very hard for us to request the termination or removal of an AHAC VISTA member from your project site. So make sure that if as issues arise that you do document them so that you can share that with your NICA contact should you want to move forward with a termination or removal. Just a note about termination. Even though we request that you treat your AHAC VISTA member as an employee of your organization, they are not. At the end of the day, they are employees of the Corporation for National Community Service. So you cannot terminate a VISTA member without CNCS approval. If you do request the removal and termination of your VISTA member, do note that we are working with a federal program, and it can take up to 2 weeks to officially have a member removed from your site. And they are still required to report to work during that time. They're still getting paid by CNCS and by NICA. So just know that you cannot terminate a VISTA and that you must seek approval from NICA and CNCS for termination. And do note that early terminations are not received well. It is expected that members make a full-year commitment to service and that sites make a full-year commitment to the AHAC program. So we here at NICA do try and to the best of our ability to work out issues to retain the VISTA member so that we can continue the future of the project. And then lastly, even if you're addressing concerns with your VISTA member, just let NICA know if a problem arises so that we are aware if there's any action that we need to take, particularly if it relates to sexual harassment or a major violation in VISTA or AHAC policies. Just keep us in the loop so that we can work with and assist you if we do need to seek termination of your member. So that concludes our training today. I just want to go ahead and go through some major takeaways that you should be leaving from this presentation. The first is that AHAC members follow many policies, but that AHAC and CNCS policies must be followed by all AHAC members even if they conflict with your local site, and that they only follow your local site policies when they do not conflict with AHAC or CNCS policies. AHAC VISTAs cannot perform direct service activities. Subsites cannot terminate a VISTA. Termination can only come from CNCS. It is the responsibility of the subsite and AHAC VISTA to ensure they understand the policies of the AHAC program. Subsite supervisors are to ensure their VISTA is not misused at the subsite. VISTA leader and AHAC associate directors enforce CNCS and AHAC policies. If you or your members are in violation, NICA will contact you directly. We here at NICA, again, do not expect you to be experts on all of these policies, but we do expect that you take the responsibility to understand them to the best of your ability and just follow up with us if you have any questions or concerns. We here, of course, are monitoring the program and to make sure that no policies are violated or broken. And so as it says here, we will contact you if we do see a situation arise. But we do ask that you also self-police and just make sure that your VISTA is being used correctly and that they are following and adhering to the policies outlined in this presentation, in the MOU, and in our handbooks that we have. If you have any questions on all of these policies or if you would like further clarification, please indicate so in the survey below. If you have any if you would like to request a meeting with NICA to further discuss policies, or if you have any concerns, please also do so in the survey below. Thank you all so much for your time today, and you can choose to go on to Part 3 of our supervisor training, or you can come back later. Do note that if you determine to come back later, you'll have to click the original link that we sent you and just go ahead and select the option to start at Part 3 of the training instead of Part 1 or Part 2. Thank you all so much for your time, and I hope you have a lovely day.